What is up, everyone? BucklingOne here. It's been a minute, huh? I've taken a bit of a break, a bit of a long break to be honest, because I've been pretty underwhelmed in the last few years with the state of the modern first-person shooter scene. I've not really enjoyed many that have come out lately, and I've just kind of lost my love for it, I suppose. But that could be about to change. Today is the day that we have all been waiting for. It is the Battlefield 6 open beta day. It's finally live, and of course I had to jump in on day one. I've been a massive fan of Battlefield for years. You can see some of my older videos were very heavily focused around Battlefield, and I may just be planning on coming back and reviving some of those series, especially my weapon guide series. I really enjoyed doing that. If this game grips me the way I hope it does, well then there's a very good chance that I could be doing that. Anyway, with that out of the way, I have to say the hype for Battlefield 6 has been through the roof, especially since they dropped those two trailers, and it's my job now to figure out and tell you, does it live up to that hype? Today I've spent around 6 solid hours in the game so far, and I have to give my brutally honest first impressions. For me, the initial wow moment, it pretty much came the first time I took out the sniper, to be honest. That sound design when the rifle cracks, the visual of the bullet trace which cuts through the air, and then the satisfying feedback when you land a headshot.
Our troops are attacking Delta.
It does feel very polished and quite powerful right out of the gate. So what's my overall gut feeling after these first 6 hours? Well, the core gameplay is there. That classic Battlefield magic, it is definitely there. We are going to break down some of the big things that need to be addressed, so let's get into it. Alright, so the first and most important part of any shooter, how does it actually feel to play? Well, the feel of a Battlefield game for me is everything, right? And this is where I want to start with gunplay. Generally, the gunplay feels pretty good. When it works well. I've played on both Xbox and PC, and I have to say, on mouse and keyboard it does feel very responsive and very snappy. But, and I suppose this is a big but for a beta, the hit registration does feel a bit off. There's been plenty of times where I'm certain that I've hit an enemy, but I get no visible hit markers. I've also lost a lot of gunfights instantaneously, so I'll turn a corner and I'm just deleted from existence. It feels like all the enemy's bullets hit me at once, and I suppose this is a classic sign of some network issues that need to be ironed out. It goes both ways though as well. I've been in situations where it feels like I need to use more than half of a magazine to drop one person, which to me suggests that some or maybe a lot of my shots just aren't counting. I know that this has been an issue previously in Battlefield 2042, and it was something that frustrated me to no end, and it seems to have carried over so far into Battlefield 6. It's so annoying, right, when I feel like I'm dying in 2 to 3 bullets, and then yet when I'm trying to kill somebody with a similar gun, say an assault rifle like a carbine or an SMG, I get deleted entirely straight away, and then I feel like I have to unload a half a magazine into someone to get the kill, right? So it doesn't feel as polished as it probably could be. I know that this is a beta, so I am willing to kind of give it a little bit of a pass for now, but this certainly needs to be ironed out before they drop the full game. Another caveat as well is I found that the controls on Xbox, they feel a bit floaty and imprecise, like the actual movement of the sticks. It feels like there's kind of some weird acceleration issues going on there, and it doesn't feel tight and responsive. I have played around with the dead zones, and I have played around with the sensitivity, and I just can't get it to feel right. Again, it's probably something to do with the beta, but I really hope that they tighten it up before launch. Next is movement. It feels good for the most part. It is fluid and you can navigate the world effectively. However, there are frustrating moments where, say, my character will get stuck on random map geometry and it's impossible to move. I have to jump or move left or right to get past the thing that I'm stuck on. Sometimes as well, I find that the character will try to automatically mantle an object in front of you when you don't want it to, and that really disrupts the flow of your movement, and it can really easily get you killed. It will move you out of the cover that you we're trying to get into and you're just an open target. I've also found as well that there is a dive feature, so if you're sprinting and you hold crouch, you will dive to the ground. But I found more often than not, my character will get straight back up, even though I actually haven't pressed any input whatsoever to make my character get up. So instead of laying prone on the ground after diving, he just gets back up into a crouch position, and it's kind of weird. The other thing then is about squad play. Battlefield is all about squad play. It's a big topic, and we need to talk about how people are leaning into the squad play, at least so far in the open beta. I feel like the recent hype of the trailers and everyone talking about Battlefield 6 online has probably brought across a lot of people that aren't used to the Battlefield way, you could say, right? They're more used to the Call of Duty way, which is just run and gun, every man for himself kind of thing. Battlefield is totally not that. It's completely different, and I have to say there are some frustrations when it comes to the new players coming in, and definitely some that I've noticed so far in the beta, right? It's the same issue that's basically plagued Battlefield for years, but I feel like it's more exaggerated now. Off the top of my head, probably the best instance I can call out is you'll be down calling out for a revive, and you just have to watch, right, as the medics will run right over your dead body and they'll completely ignore you. You could be in another situation where you get shot, you're downed, there's a medic 5 meters away from you, literally looking at you while you're struggling, dying on the ground, and they don't do anything. Maybe they just need to incentivize sticking together and playing as a squad a little bit better, or just lean into showing players how to play as a squad and really push that squad mentality rather than everyone for themselves kind of mentality. Speaking of medics though, and revives, etc., there is one feature that they have put into the game this year which I absolutely love. It's when you're a medic, or if anyone in your squad goes down, before you revive them, you can actually drag that player back into cover, which is a super cool feature. I've used it so many times where a teammate of mine has been shot and he's lying basically on a corner, so I can edge up to the corner, grab my down buddy, drag him back into cover, revive him, and then we're good to go again. So big props to that feature. I know for sure that's going to be a game changer. With that being said, right, Battlefield, it is a first person shooter, and obviously all the points that I've talked about are valid, but I also feel it's more than just gunplay and movement. It's also a sandbox, right? Battlefield has always been known for being open, expansive, sandbox type maps where anything can happen and all the crazy stuff happens and you get those incredible Battlefield moments. The map, the modes, the destruction, they create those moments, right? They even have a tagline for it, only in Battlefield. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that can be associated with that. I need to give a bit of context though as well. So there are 2 game modes that are available to, well, 3 I suppose. I haven't played Domination yet, but Domination is available. I haven't had time to play it because I've been solely focused, I'd say 90% focused on playing Breakthrough. For all of my Battlefield career history, you could say, I've always focused more on Rush and Breakthrough rather than Conquest. I do enjoy Conquest, however, I prefer to play the Breakthrough game modes. They just grab me a bit more than Conquest does. So with that being said, that's the perspective that I'm mainly going to be talking about when I'm talking about the gameplay. It is from a Breakthrough perspective, but a lot of what I'm going to say will apply to Conquest as well, and has applied to Conquest for the few games that I have played in Conquest. To spell it out, there's 2 maps in the beta. There's one called Liberation Peak, which is kind of the snowy map that you've probably seen in a lot of the live streams. And there's another one called Siege of Cairo, which is city-based warfare, less open, you could say, where Liberation Peak is completely the opposite. Very open, very long sight lines. So 2 drastically different maps, which lead to 2 very different types of gameplay. They are designed reasonably well, but there are some issues that become really clear after just a few matches. I feel that there's far too much clutter on the maps, which is a nightmare if you are trying to move around in vehicles, especially on Breakthrough when you only have tanks, basically. It can make it a real chore just to navigate your way around all of the clutter. But that's not the biggest issue for me. I think the biggest issue is actually the objective balance, right? I've been in far too many games where the attacking team can't even capture the very first sector. It just stalls completely. This has happened to me on both the attacker and defending team, so it's not like one team has an advantage over the other. It's more about balance, I'd say. Siege of Cairo then, while I can see it being a fan favourite because it has that Operation Locker kind of style, very Killfest orientated, tight corridors, very up in your face, close and personal CQB combat, you could say. I think it has too many choke points. And then it does devolve into basically a meat grinder. As I said, it's a kill fest. Sometimes it can be very hard to push. And if you are just trying to play the objective and win the round, or even just advance further up the map, it's not very fun. It definitely needs to be balanced, and I'm sure that they're going to be taking all of this data and feedback into account before they release the final game. So I'm hoping and praying that they are able to adjust the spawn points and also the objective placement. I feel like the objectives could be placed a little bit better on the map. There's something we definitely have to talk about as well, which is one of the most hyped features, and it's destruction, right? Destruction is definitely back. It's been a feature of Battlefield for the longest time, right? And it's something that really made Battlefield unique, was the ability to destroy basically everything on the map. That kind of disappeared a little bit in 2042. It wasn't as big as, say, in Battlefield 4, for instance, the one that always comes to mind with the Levolution, right? And you could completely change how a map plays by destroying the environment. It was hyped, and the developers definitely talked a lot about destruction and really tried to push home that you can destroy everything and you can create a pathway through to get to your objectives. For the most part, that's true. But there are areas and places where it's not specifically true. I'd give it around about a 6 out of 10 for the destruction that we've been promised, because it does feel a little bit gimmicky. I'll explain why. We were promised the ability to destroy almost everything, and as I said, that's not quite true. You'll find a building and you will be able to blow a massive hole in one of the walls, right, and be able to get people to pour through and get a new way towards getting to the objective. However, there has been times and specific areas where I'll blow a massive hole, as I said, in one wall, and then the wall that is right next to it is basically, it's like it's made out of some magical indestructible material. You can't destroy it. And these walls tend to be the ones that will directly overlook an objective and give the player an advantage and some very good sightlines. So it feels like it's by design that some of the walls are indestructible, whereas some are. I have to say the majority of walls are destructible, but it does break the immersion when it's inconsistent and selective. I kind of understand the reasoning behind it, but I just wish that they didn't hype it as much if they weren't going to actually fully deliver on what they were saying. Speaking of Levolution earlier on as well, for those big map altering crazy events, so far I haven't come across anything in the game, so it remains to be seen if that's a feature that's even going to be in the game. I'm sure there are going to be some things in the final release and they just want to keep those cards close to their chest for now and don't want to ruin the surprise. I am hoping that there is going to be some kind of stuff like that, because that's what makes Battlefield in my opinion. Now, with this being an open beta, of course, we have to talk about some of the technical side of things. We do expect bugs and some performance issues, but the overall presentation, the graphics and the sound, it really can tell us a lot about what to expect and what the final game is going to look like, right? And I have to say, in typical Battlefield fashion, the graphics are just excellent. No complaints, they're just superb. The level of detail on the character models, on the world and the weapons, it's just fantastic. The environments are absolutely top notch. It is a visual showcase and I would expect nothing less from DICE. They always hit the nail on the head with the graphics, and somehow every time they release a new Battlefield it just seems like the graphics are better and better, which is saying something, because even if you look at the graphics in Battlefield 4, like, they still are pretty good graphics and still stand up to some of today's standards. So Battlefield 6, to be able to greatly surpass that, it's a technical achievement. Fair play to DICE, they absolutely nailed the graphics. As for the audio, it's the same story, it's just simply excellent. The noise of the battle around you, it's incredible, it's very immersive. The gunshots are punchy, you can hear all the bullets whizzing past your head. The explosions are really cool, and basically the general audio experience is just very, very impressive. DICE remains the king of sound design, and I will absolutely die on that hill. I have yet to play a first-person shooter where the audio is better than any Battlefield that's been put out so far. And what about performance, right? Well, I'm happy to report that pretty much overall it's been pretty good. As I've said, I've played on both PC and my Xbox Series X. On the console, the frame rate is solid. They did promise that console performance was going to be solid, and they have delivered on that, which is great to see. I didn't experience any stuttering or glitching, anything to that effect. The same goes for PC. I'm running an RTX 3090 and an i7 13700K, so I do appreciate that I have a pretty top of the line, although kind of aging right now, at least for the graphics card, but still it's a very solid graphics card. So I appreciate that my experience is not going to be the same as everybody else's, but with that being said, I had a great frame rate and no hitching, no stuttering, nothing like that. You can tell that the game has been well optimized, and it's a fantastic sign for a beta. On the flip side though, of course, it wouldn't be a beta without a few bugs, and I have experienced a few. On PC, I had the game crash to desktop twice, which is not the end of the world, but there are crashes that are there. They can be annoying, they can be frustrating, so it's just something to point out. On the Xbox as well, there were a couple of times when the game just got stuck at the loading screen and it just froze. So I had to close from the dashboard, relaunch the game again. It's pretty minor stuff, but it still is worth pointing out. And now for the elephant in the room, right? There's always a few big design choices in a new Battlefield when it comes out that cause a lot of debate. Specifically, if you can think back and remember to Battlefield 2042 and how insane the debate around that game was when it first came out. Battlefield 6, I feel, while it won't be 2042 level of debate, there are some things that need to be talked about. The biggest question basically on everybody's mind, is there specialists or are we reverting back to the class-based system? Well, I am happy to say that there are no specialists, right? We are going back to the traditional class-based system and it just feels right. And they've even added 2 modes for Conquest. They have a traditional classic weapon locked mode where you can only use the guns for your specific class. They also have an open mode where you can use any weapon that you've unlocked on any of the classes. So similar to Battlefield 2042, but they're also delivering the classic Battlefield experience in the same vein, and it's up to you to choose which one you want. The only critique that I have is that Breakthrough seems to be locked into the open mode, so you're able to pick any gun on any class, and to be honest, I'd like to see a weapon class locked version of Breakthrough added in the future, which really encourages that classic Battlefield role-based, team squad-based objective play, when you need to have specific people on your team using specific classes to deal with specific threats, right? Next, it wouldn't be Battlefield without vehicles, right? We all know and love Battlefield for the fact that we can fly around in jets, fly around in helicopters, jump into tanks and just blow the crap out of stuff. So of course they are going to be here, but I do have to talk about the tanks in particular, because pretty much the only vehicles that we're able to get access to so far, at least in Breakthrough, is tanks. I haven't played enough of Conquest to be able to talk about helicopters and jets and all the other stuff, but I do have to talk about the tanks in Breakthrough. I know, again, the caveat is that this is a beta, but the tanks, the way I'd kind of describe them, to be honest, is they're like glass behemoths. Glass cannons, whatever you want to call it. They do dish out massive amounts of damage, right? That's what they're there for. But I feel like they're so easy to take down. It is a classic Battlefield thing where any good coordinated squad can take down a tank really easily. But what I've noticed is that people who are playing in tanks don't push up the map. They sit in the spawn and they just fire away from a distance where they can't be shot at because they're so afraid of losing the tank. Talking about vehicles as well, there is a new health mechanic on the vehicles where it won't recover to full health if it drops below like a certain point on the health bar, and you'll be able to see these little notches on the health bar, and they basically designate the different points of where you can recover the vehicle's health to. I'm not really sure if I like it or not yet. I mean, it is interesting and it makes things a bit different, and it does help, I suppose, if you have an enemy tank that's just absolutely dominating. If you hit it enough times, it won't be able to fully recover its health, which makes it a lot easier to destroy. However, if you are in the tank, it just makes the tank gameplay a little less fun, I guess, because you become easier to destroy and it can just be annoying. So it remains to be seen how this is going to be perceived. I'm on the fence about it right now. I do like it in some aspects and I don't like it in other aspects. Speaking of tanks, I think they do need to be rebalanced though as well, and that's from the tank's perspective. The gunner LMG is just way too powerful. I've deleted people in 2 or 3 hits, and these aren't even headshots or anything, just shots to the body. Like, I'll point at someone, I'll click, and they're dead. That's it. There's no way to escape from it. And I feel like it's the same for the LMG on the main turret. It's kind of weird because you'll get splash damage from the actual cannon, but a lot of the times you're actually quicker to just kill someone with the LMG. And I know people might say, oh, well, obviously that's the point of the LMG. But from my experience in previous battlefields, if you hit someone close or directly with the cannon, or at least close to them, chances are you'll actually end up killing them outright. And my experience so far with the tanks has been that if I hit someone with the main cannon near to their body, the splash damage isn't powerful enough to actually kill them outright. But if I just drive up and open fire with my LMG, I can take out 3, 4, 5, 6 very, very quickly. So that definitely needs to be rebalanced. That brings me to what I would say is my biggest concern, which is looking at the whole picture, right? It's the fear that DICE hasn't learned enough from their previous mistakes. Yes, the beta feels good and it looks promising, but there are elements here that do still remind me of 2042 and some of the core issues that I had with that game. So I hope that they can sort out the map flow issues, the spawn points, and really nail down the balance, because a lot depends on this game. I really feel like this is make or break for the Battlefield series, and I just want to see it return to the glory days of old where Battlefield was just the king and there was no disputing that. And I really hope that going forward, because the FPS space is in such a terrible condition right now, you've got Call of Duty, which is just an awful game. Black Ops 6 is terrible. I absolutely despise it, to be honest. It's just a microtransaction fest with all these stupid skins, and I could go on, but I'm not going to. So I really feel that Battlefield has to succeed, and I really hope that they can iron out these issues, because I do think that we have a great game on our hands. The foundation is there for a really truly special game, and I really hope that they take the time and the data to learn from this open beta, push through some of the changes, and at least from day one when the game drops in October, we'll be all set to have a good time. Speaking of when the game drops, so I don't need to talk too much about what happened on launch with 2042. It's been well recorded, well documented. I was there, I experienced how awful that launch was. I am very confident though that when this game launches, it is going to be absolutely fine. I don't see there being many issues or bugs. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but from what I've seen from the beta, it looks like everything is pointing in the right direction for this to be a technically very well built game. So, after 6 hours or so with the Battlefield 6 open beta, what is my final verdict? On one hand, the presentation is absolutely superb, right? The graphics and audio are top tier, the performance is surprisingly polished for a beta, and the gunplay, which despite having some hit-reg issues, it feels very solid at its core. Most importantly though, the return to the classic class system, it's a massive win. But on the other hand, I'm worried about the map design, which can create frustrating choke points, the inconsistent destruction, and the questionable vehicle balance. That lingering feeling that some of the mistakes from the past might not have been fully learned from is my biggest red flag. Ultimately, the beta has left me feeling cautiously optimistic. There is the foundation of a truly fantastic Battlefield game here, but its success is really going to depend entirely on how DICE listens to feedback and making the right adjustments before launch. But that's just my opinion after day one. We have another 5 days, I think, left of the beta between the 2 weekends and the early access. So hopefully they tweak some things around and we get to play some of the new maps, get to look at some of the new guns, etc. And I'm really looking forward to it. I want to also know, what do you think? Have you been able to play the beta? What's your experience been like? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Please let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. I'm always open and interested to hear your thoughts, and I will absolutely respond to every single comment on my videos. If you enjoyed this breakdown and you do want to see more Battlefield content, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. That really encourages me and gives me good signals, to be honest, to keep producing Battlefield content. I feel like I might be returning for Battlefield 6 to the YouTube content video creation space. It remains to be seen, but I did want to put this video out there and see how we go. Thank you so much for watching. This has been BucklingOne. I will see you on the battlefield, and also I'll see you in my next video.